Hi everybody, welcome to class with Professor Mead. Today we're going to talk about it's not just us, women around the world do more housework and have less free time. This was written by Bryce Covert. This was in the news article, which students often really enjoy. I do too, because they're like 2 pages. Our think pair share for today. We want to talk about the methods, the methodological transparency difference of methods in academic articles versus news articles. So we've been looking at a lot of academic articles, but some of these that we're looking at are news articles. And so what are some of the methodological transparency differences? In other words, are they being as transparent, more transparent, less transparent? Why and how? What are the overall findings in regards to the gender division of labor? What's the averages around the world? What are some of the significant contributions or contributors to how labor is divided? And explain what men are doing and what they're not doing today compared to women and how that's changed since the 1960s. So the methods. The research here was conducted in 26 different countries. Their findings essentially state women take on more than half of the unpaid work that needs to get done. They do most of the caring for children and most of the housework, and women generally have less leisure time than men. In Japan and Korea, because this is averages around the world, women do 80% of the unpaid work. In Norway, they do about 54%. In the Scandinavian countries in general, it tends to be more equal. And the reason why is because countries with the most generously paid family leave policies and publicly provided childcare have individuals within families, men and women, are better about splitting the work. They tend to look at it in a more neutral way, right? They're not putting more or less value on it based on gender. They tend to look at it as more of an equivalent value. And a lot of that has to do with the policies, the public provided health care, and the generous paid family leave, 6 months for both parents as opposed to 2 months for moms and 2 weeks for dads in the United States. In the US, women do about 60% of the unpaid work. So men spend actually more time doing paid work. So if you only were to compare women in their paid jobs and paid work and men in their paid work, men work more. But men have more leisure time than women. So when you compare leisure time, men spend more of their time in leisure. Men care for children much more today than they did in the 1960s, 3 times as much. And we saw another article reiterate this previously. So we're seeing, articles, research kind of support each other in that regards. Men do still do considerably less work than for their children and child care duties inside the house than women do. They just do much more than their fathers and their grandfathers did. Men have basically doubled the amount of housework that they did since the 1960s. Not hard, since they did almost zero housework. So it's not that men are doing considerably more. It's just that if you have a very low number to begin with, any increment can be a large increment in terms of percentage. Obviously, they still do considerably less housework than women. So this is the minutes time. So you're going to get asked questions more or less, right? So I'm giving you the actual numbers, but what I would like you to remember is who's doing more, who has more, right? So care for household members, women tend to spend about 41 minutes per day, whereas men spend 19. Routine housework, women spend about 126 minutes per day. Men spend about 82. Women tend to do more of the housework that has to be done over and over again, whereas men tend to do more of the housework that is incremental housework, right? So women do the dishes, Men take out the trash. Trash usually doesn't need to be taken out every day or 3 times a day like dishes, right? TV and radio, women spend about 136 minutes a day, men about 162. Sports, about 12 minutes a day, men about 25. And sleeping, women 522 to men's 509. So women sleep more, do more unpaid work, do more child work, and watch less TV. Men do less chores, less routine housework. They do less care for household members. They spend more time watching TV or listening to the radio. They spend more time watching sports and less time sleeping. So normally what I would have students do for this particular assignment is to create a division of time for men and women in a country that you would choose, right? So here we kind of see an example of this. Women's work is in Italy, right? The extra hours women spend is about 21 hours more per week on unpaid work. In Spain, it's about 15. UK, it's about 11. USA, it's about 9. China about 8, Poland 7, Slovenia 6, Belgium 5, Denmark 3. A quick review here. What's the methodological transparency difference? What's the overall findings? What is the average division of labor around the world? What significantly contributes to how labor is divided around the world? One of the things is care for children, especially as women have children, they tend to cut their hours at work and increase their labor at home. We value labor differently, whether it's paid or unpaid. A lot of times we won't even call unpaid labor work. You know, there's, oh, she's just a stay-at-home mom, or I don't work, I stay at home and take care of my family, right? So we don't call it work, we don't value it as work, and it's not counted as work. One of the things, you know, even men tend to be really good at heaping reward upon themselves, prestige, and women are not very good at this. I'll give you an example. It's a personal example, right? So I'm a teacher. My husband works as an inspector in construction. And he was telling me a story about one of his colleagues who's female, and she does the same job as him, and she has a hard time staying late and doing extra hours because she still has to pick up her kids and groceries and take care of the home. And one of the reasons why is that she said that her and her husband decided that his job is more important, his job is harder than hers in construction and inspection, because I don't even know what his job is, but they both decided that his job is harder, so she does most of the housework. My husband, on the other hand, has decided that his job is harder than mine as a teacher because he works in construction. Even though he does more of the intellectual side, he doesn't really have to do a lot of physical labor. But he has a harder job, according to him, than I do. And then I have a colleague who works with me at the university, and he was telling me how he doesn't do as much of the housework because he's a professor, and so his job is harder than his wife's because she just works in the academic bureaucratic side, and so she doesn't have as much work as he does, so therefore she does more of the work at home. And I thought this was really interesting analogy because it's not the job, it's the gender of the person doing the job. Men will say their job is harder, their work is more prestigious, it's more valuable, and women tend to not be good at doing that same thing, and therefore will agree that their spouse's job is more difficult, and therefore they should be doing more of the labor at home. What's the significant contributor to how labor is divided around the world? And so we talked about some of the policies, right, and some of the legal differences that change things. And then explain what men are doing and not doing today compared to women, and how that's changed since the 1960s. Okay, this was it, I believe. So I'll sign off as your reluctant YouTube professor. Oh, here's your reading. The reading is contributed to my learning. So I want to ask you this. I always put this in. Did you actually read? Right? So you are responsible for your own learning, right? The lectures are here to help you navigate through the articles and the resources, but do consider, how much effort you're putting in. It is, especially like a reading like this that's a page and a half or 2 pages long, to skip the reading, really kind of, and then to not fault yourself or to try to place blame on others because you didn't learn the material, can really significantly impact your ability to learn material and to understand things. So things often don't make sense when you don't read prior to a lecture. But if you read prior to a lecture, you'll pick out things that the teacher says that you would have otherwise missed that seemed insignificant. Okay, have a great day.